Hi everyone, I'm Nu-Trix, and today we're going to talk about octaphonic synthesizers compared to polyphonic synthesizers. And I'm going to use the GForce OB-E. It's a software recreation of the Oberheim SEM8. Sounds amazing, honestly. And there's a reason to why it sounds like that. Let's just first explain what's a octaphonic synthesizer. I mean, GForce contacted me this week to know if I was interested in testing their OB-E. I was, of course, curious. And when they say octaphonic, it piqued my curiosity to say, okay, how is it different, an octaphonic from polyphonic synthesizer? An octaphonic synth is basically a polyphonic synth, but each oscillator has his own envelope and filter and LFO and all that stuff. Instead of having 8 of the same notes being triggered when you play the keys, you can have 8 different synthesizers being triggered. So let's say you play one note after the other. You could actually go through the 8 different sound modules, and each of them could be different. Or you could have, when you press a key, you can have 8 of them playing at the same time, like a unison mode on a polyphonic synthesizer, but the 8 of them could be tuned differently, have a high pass and low pass, so it becomes very big and different and complex. It's really having separate control over each of the 8 voices of your polyphonic synthesizers. In a polyphonic synthesizer, when you select the filter, well, it affects the 8 voices the same way, meaning it can change the way you play, or as you go up and down the keys, it could be different, but basically you're playing one sound. If you play a violin, you play a violin sound. If you play a bass, it's a bass. You know, it's one sound. So a polyphonic synthesizer is this notion of you're playing one instrument, whereas a octaphonic synthesizer, you're playing 8 different instruments. They could be playing the same sound, so it becomes polyphonic, but they could be playing 8 different sounds. That's where it's curiously bizarre and fun, and it can be a really an open box to experimentation. Let's actually look at the SEM8, the OB-E, and you'll see how complex and fun it could be. What's an SEM8? Well, this is it. This is what it looks like. SEM stands, if I actually go closer, you see it's Synthesizer Expander Module, SEM. And you have this little module that controls the volume for all of them and the pan. And you have 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you have 4 modules in, let's say, the keyboard section. And there's another set of 4 modules at the same time. So this whole package would be the SEM8. By default, it's very simple if you look at it. Each module is a simple module. Actually, let's look at the plugin. Let's zoom on one module just to see one. You have VCO1 and VCO2. These are the control over the 2 voltage control oscillator. So VCO1, the frequency. And if you look at this section here, parameter display, you see -24. So you can have an octave down and an octave up. You can double click and say, well, 0, enter, and then you can type the value if you want. So it could be faster depending if you want a precise value. So 2 VCO, you can sync the second one to the first VCO. You can have modulation, control frequency, so the pitch, or modulation, control the pulse width. You have a choice of the source. Is it envelope number 1, which is under it, VCO3, or LFO1? So there's one LFO, which is here. I have a choice of the waveform. Click on it or move the knob under it, so you can change the waveform of the LFO. If you want a second LFO, you can use the VCO3. If you put LFO rate on here, it is now a second LFO. If you put it in sync, now it's going to be synced an LFO, but synced to the tempo of the software, the DAW, whatever it is. Here what you have is the waveform of VCO1. Is it a sawtooth or a pulse? For the third one, you have a waveform or a noise. So you have a choice of having the wave and the waveform is decided here, saw or sine wave, okay, or square. VCF filter, so cutoff point, resonance. It's a 12 dB per octave filter, but you have a choice of low pass, band pass, or high pass. It's a multi-mode. Under them, you've got the LFO1 rate. So the speed of the LFO that you see here, you have the speed here. It's kind of weird in a way that it's not with it, but if you go back to the notion that normally, if you unzoom this, well, you don't see the LFO. It's on the back, because what you see is the front of the module. And if you click on this little button here, you see the back, and that's where you have a choice of the VCO3. So that's why it's here, the rate of the LFO. So you don't have to flip the module to see it. Now, if you put it in zoom mode, you see everything at the same time and at the front. Envelope 1, attack, decay, sustain. Now, keep in mind that it's still an ADSR envelope. There's still attack, decay, sustain, and release, but there's one single control that controls the decay and the release. So decay and release will have the same time, but you still have control over them. So there's still attack, decay, sustain, and release, but one control over the two. There's also the filter tracking, so I mean if you go up the keys, it will actually go up and down. So it will follow the keys, so the filter can open and close. The filter keyboard tracking center, so where's the center value, where it's basically the value of the cutoff point. So that's what it is. You've got aftertouch if you want to use it and where it's going to be assigned. You have everything that's assigned to velocity. You know, when you press harder on the keys, frequency, the mode, the resonance, modulation 1 and modulation 2, that's for this here, how much you want them as you press harder. So it's very reactive in a way. And envelope 1 attack, envelope 2 attack, amplifier or amplitude, and the VCO 1 and 2 going from saw to pulse, you can actually change that as you go harder on the keys. So you could have a soft sound, or doesn't mean to be soft, but when you press soft on the keys, you could have one type of sound, and as you play louder, you're switching to the other waveform. Think about it, you've got 8 of them, so it's really powerful, and you can have 8 totally different ones, so it can be really bizarre. The way you're going to play them, that's where it's going to be the interesting aspect. If you go in the keyboard section, you got poly mode, mono, and legato. Where am I connected? Where am I connected? Okay. You have monophonic. And you get monophonic legato. And then you've got I've got the delay. I can turn it off. Now listen to it with headphone. Some evolution between left and right. If I put the unison on, see they're all panned here. They've got great sounding. Take out the delay. If you look at it, all the 8 modules have the sync on, so it's just like a massive, and it's in the unison mode, so put off the unison mode, you have only one. And if you listen carefully, you're switching between them, and because they're panned differently, you hear them move. I'm not playing right, but in polyphonic mode. Now, the way this is going to be combined, that's really where it becomes interesting. Outside of this, you've got reset and continuous. Now, reset and continuous, what it means, if I press reset, every time I press it, if I release everything and I press a key, it's going to start playing module 1. In this case, 1 and 2 are playing. If I press continuous, every time I press, it's going to go further down the road. So it's always going to skip to the next module. So it's continuously asking for a new one. So if they're really different, you're going to hear that evolution. This one here, Shooting Star, it's a split. So there's a split between, I would say, the upper modules. If you look at the top here, the upper modules, the module 5, 6, 7, and 8, all of them are mixed together with the level and with the pans. And on the bottom, you've got lower modules, 1, 2, 3, 4, with the pans. And then if I play on the one side, and the split is this little arrow here. So you have this. So because of that, you're able to split into two and having upper and lower being two different instruments. There's also something interesting. There's, of course, this is general stuff here. You got frequency one. If you do this, you're controlling all the frequency one at the same time. In the VCO2, same logic, all the VCO2 at one time, at the same time. You got the vibrato, so it's another LFO just for vibrato. So you get the rate, the amount, and you want it to be on upper only or lower. So again, upper lower means upper, you have it here, upper, so 5, 6, 7, 8, and lower 1, 2, 3, 4. So upper and lower would be here to select. You've got undo and redo, so everything you do, if you do an error, you can undo it, redo it. And there's a flip, which is interesting. When you do flip, you see the other side. So you see the rear panel of the SEM. So you've got the VCO3, the LFO1, and so all of that. And that's very technical terms here. Flip it again, you see the normal side. Again, if you want to see that one, just that one, you can actually click on zoom to see the full two side. And if you want to change between them, you can actually change between them by clicking in the middle between one. And again, they're positioned 5 to 8 at the top because they're the upper, and the lower 1 to 4. Okay, so you can rapidly switch between them. There's also a grouping feature. You can group together this way. So I change this on. All the ones are grouped right now. So there's ways to do this so it's faster if you want to edit more than one at the same time. You saw this, but there's also a sequencer here. Go on. And there's also a delay here. So if you want to see the delay in the sequencer, you press on sequence effects and you have this little window here, and you have these two sections, the MIDI sequencer and the stereo delay. Stereo delay, simple. You have a sync for the speed on each side, the time if you want, the crossover if you want the sound to delay from one side to the other, if you want it to be both on lower and upper. So you could, if you're in split mode, you can say, well, the bass, it's not going to have delay, and only the upper mode, the high keys, the lead, will have effects, which is understandable. You have both, which is in the middle. You have the mix. You have high pass, so you can cut the bass if you need. You have feedback. You have depth and rate. So there's an LFO on it. So that's why the delay is really cool. It's a wobbling or moving delay if you want. And you have a separate time for left and right. Well, that's just a weird sound. Let's pick something else. Take off the delay and just listen to it. Split. Go back here to see if it's a split. Just changing between sounds. actually change these settings. Four SEM running at the same time. This is just like massive sound. So that's why this is really good. I personally, this is kind of the one of the really cool synth for pads. Is just like so wide and rush, but at the same time, you got to be careful with that because it means that that sound takes the whole spectrum. You know, it's everywhere. It's super big. So you cannot have a lot of other things happening, or you're going to have to clean it up, you know, cut a little bit of the bass. You've got a place for the kick drum and bass, let's say, and cut a little bit of the high. So you got a, you know, very high-end, high-pitched sound playing. So you're going to have to think about it because they're so big that they're going to take the whole spectrum of the song. Massive. Now, this one's interesting. You have a sequence. You go into sequence here. See? C3, C3, and there's the gate here. And the velocity. What is the velocity doing here? Gate, velocity. Right now it's sent to SEMs or all. Or SEM 8. So only this one here. That's the one. See, only this one is being used. And right now it's locked. So I cannot move it. But if I quick unlock, I could actually. But another play. When I press the keys, so I still can use, I'm going to stop this. I still can use the sequencer to trigger one module while I play the other 7. So, and that was one of the logic of Tom Oberheim when he built this, is to have a sequencer run a module while you play another module. So you still can play, because the early analog synthesizers, if you had a sequencer, well, you would play the only voice that your synth had. So you were kind of stuck there. Well, I'm just going to go through some of the sounds, and we'll explore that for the fun of it. press load, there's another way to manage this. You say, well, I want to say everything that is split and poly. Well, and if you want the sequence, I like these like very very nice. A lot of cool patches to play with. If you like that sound and you like that out of the ordinary experience that you can have 8 different modules triggered by your same notes, it could be very experimental. It could be very weird and rhythm-like, because every time you press a key, you play a bass line and you have 8 different sound of a bass. Or play a lead, and every time you press a key, you're going through one of the 8 notes. Or you play a key and you have 8 different notes playing. It's a monophonic unison sound. It's just like, you know, big. The OB-E has his own sound, and it's just like, I find it really cool. I like the sound. I like the richness of it. That's it. Stay safe. Make more music. See you soon.